James Porter's lungs were drowning in soot when he made the decision that would change everything. It was 1835. He was 11 years old, and he was stuck inside a chimney in a Mayfair mansion, unable to breathe, unable to move, certain he was about to die in the darkness, like so many climbing boys before him. His master, a brutal man named Hickson, was shouting from below, threatening to light a fire beneath James if he didn't hurry. This was standard practice, terrified the boys so thoroughly that even suffocation seemed preferable to disobedience. James had seen 3 boys die in chimneys over the past year. Their small bodies were simply abandoned, bricked up inside the flues where they'd become lodged, their screams fading to silence. But something happened to James in that moment of absolute terror. Instead of panic, he felt rage, cold, clarifying rage that burned away fear and left only one thought: I will not die like this. I will not die for a man who sees me as disposable. I will survive, and I will make him regret ever touching me. James twisted, scraped, clawed his way upward with strength born of fury rather than hope. His hands bled, his knees shredded against the brick. But he reached the top, emerged onto the roof gasping and alive, covered head to toe in black soot, looking like death itself. That night, James ran. Not unusual. Climbing boys ran often, though they rarely got far. London was full of people who'd return runaways for the reward money Hickson offered. But James didn't run blindly. He'd been planning this for months, observing, learning, preparing. He ran to the dockyards, where he knew a man named Samuel Fletcher operated a small lamp oil business. James had cleaned Fletcher's chimneys twice, and unlike most wealthy men, Fletcher had spoken to him like a human being, asked his name, seemed genuinely disturbed by the blood on James's hands. James found Fletcher's shop closed for the night, so he curled up in the doorway and waited. When Fletcher arrived at dawn, he found a small, soot-covered boy who looked him in the eye and said, "I can read and write, sir. I can calculate figures. I'm small enough to fit in tight spaces where larger men cannot. I will work harder than anyone you've ever employed, and I will never ever steal from you. Give me a chance." Fletcher stared at this extraordinary child. "You're a runaway." "Yes, sir." "Your master will be looking for you." "Yes, sir. He'll say I'm his property, that the law gives him rights over me. But the law is wrong, sir. I'm nobody's property. I'm a person who's choosing different work." Something in that declaration, the sheer audacity of an 11-year-old boy claiming autonomy in a world that denied him any, struck Fletcher deeply. Can you truly read and write? James picked up a piece of charcoal from the gutter and wrote on the shop's wall, "My name is James Porter, and I will not die in darkness." Fletcher hired him on the spot. The work was hard, but infinitely better than chimneys. James delivered lamp oil to shops and homes across London, helped maintain Fletcher's inventory, learned the mathematics of supply and profit. But more importantly, he learned how business actually worked, not from books, but from watching Fletcher negotiate with suppliers, handle difficult customers, make decisions about investment and risk. Within 2 years, James had made himself indispensable. Fletcher's business had doubled, largely because James had suggested they expand into selling not just lamp oil, but the lamps themselves. People who need oil need lamps, sir, James had argued. Why send them elsewhere for half the transaction? By 15, James was managing Fletcher's shop during the old man's frequent illnesses. By 17, when Fletcher died, he left his business to James rather than his own wastrel son. James earned this. Fletcher's will stated simply, "My blood son never lifted a finger in honest work. My adopted son in spirit has worked harder than 10 men." But inheriting a lamp oil business in 1841 was inheriting a dying industry. Gaslighting was coming to London. Within a decade, lamp oil would be obsolete. James saw this clearly, and rather than clinging desperately to a failing business, he made a gamble that terrified him. He sold everything. Fletcher's shop, inventory, customer lists, all of it went for £300. A fortune to the boy who'd owned nothing but soot-stained rags 6 years earlier. But £300 was exactly enough to buy a stake in something new. A small gasworks operation in Camden that was struggling to compete with larger companies. James's partners thought he was insane. A 20-year-old with no formal education, trying to compete in an industry dominated by wealthy investors with political connections. But James had something they lacked. He understood the customers they were trying to serve. "You're selling gas wrong," James told his skeptical partners at their first meeting. "You're trying to compete with the big companies on their terms. Wealthy neighborhoods, large contracts, political favor. You'll lose that fight. But there's another market nobody's touching. The working class areas, the small shops, the people who can't afford the big companies' installation fees." His proposal was revolutionary. Offer gas installation on credit, payable through monthly bills. Make it affordable for shopkeepers and middle-class homes. Build a customer base the wealthy competitors were ignoring. "They won't pay," his partners argued. "The poor don't honor debts." "The poor honor debts when they're treated fairly," James shot back. "I was poor. I know exactly how poor people think. They'll pay if the terms are honest, and if you don't cheat them. And once they're customers, they're loyal customers. The wealthy will switch companies for a penny of savings. The working class stays with people who treat them right." It worked. Within 3 years, Camden Gasworks had 2,000 residential customers, more than the major companies in that district. Within 5 years, they'd expanded to 3 London neighborhoods. Within 10 years, they'd been bought out by one of the major gas companies for £15,000. James's share was £6,000. At 30 years old, the chimney sweep, who'd nearly died in the darkness, was wealthy beyond anything he'd imagined. But wealth changes people, and not always for the better. James could have become exactly like the masters he'd despised. Distant, disconnected from suffering, comfortable with exploitation because it no longer touched him personally. Many men from poverty do exactly that, as if proving they've truly escaped requires becoming the oppressor rather than the oppressed. James chose differently. He remembered too clearly what it felt like to be disposable. He remembered the 3 boys who died in chimneys, their names never recorded, their deaths never investigated. He remembered the helplessness, the certainty that nobody cared whether he lived or died. In 1851, James established the Porter Fund for Climbing Boys, dedicating £2,000 to rescuing child chimney sweeps and training them for other professions. Over the next decade, the fund helped 300 boys escape chimney work. Many became tradesmen. Some became businessmen themselves. All of them carried forward the same message James had learned. You are not disposable. You are not property. And your birth does not determine your death. When Parliament finally banned child chimney sweeps in 1875, James testified before the committee. He was 51 years old by then, a respected businessman and philanthropist. But he began his testimony by rolling up his sleeves, showing the scars that still covered his arms. "These are from chimneys, gentlemen," he said quietly. "I earned these at 11 years old. Climbing flues in your houses, cleaning the soot your comfort created. I nearly died in those chimneys. 3 boys I knew did die. Their names were Tommy, Samuel, and Robert. Nobody remembers them but me. I'm here to make sure their deaths meant something. I'm here to make sure no more boys die in darkness, so that gentlemen can have clean chimneys." The law passed, not because of James alone. Many people fought for it, but his testimony, delivered with the authority of someone who'd lived it, carried weight that abstract moral arguments couldn't match. James Porter died in 1889 at 65 years old. His obituary in the Times called him a self-made man of industry and philanthropy. But that description misses what made him remarkable. Many men make fortunes from nothing. Fewer use those fortunes to destroy the systems that created their suffering. James's legacy wasn't his wealth. It was the law that bore his scars as evidence. It was the 300 boys who escaped chimneys because he remembered what they were enduring. It was the proof that suffering doesn't have to make you cruel. It can make you determined that others won't suffer as you did. On his deathbed, James's last words were to his wife. "I didn't die in the darkness. That's enough. That's everything." But he was wrong. He didn't just survive the darkness. He pulled others out with him. And that difference between escaping alone and bringing others along is what separates mere survival from genuine triumph. The chimney sweep, who'd gambled his life on one desperate climb to freedom, had spent that freedom freeing others. Not bad for a boy who'd owned nothing but rage and determination. Not bad at all.